My son-in-law forgot his phone after dinner at my house. At 3 a.m. he knocked desperately on my door. As soon as I opened, he pushed me and shouted, "Useless old man, what did you do?" I just signaled to the street, and the show began. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I never thought a simple family dinner would change everything. At 59, I believed I had seen enough of life's surprises, especially after losing my wife Margaret 2 years ago to cancer. These Sunday dinners with my daughter Emma and her family had become my lifeline, the one thing that kept me connected to what mattered most. That evening started like any other. Emma had prepared her famous pot roast, the same recipe Margaret used to make. My twin grandsons, Jake and Sam, both 8 years old, were arguing over who got to sit next to Grandpa, while little Sophie, just 4, climbed onto my lap before anyone could stop her. "Dad, you spoil them too much," Emma laughed, but I could see the tiredness in her eyes. She had been looking worn down lately, thinner than usual, with the dark circles that makeup couldn't quite hide. Marcus, her husband of 10 years, sat at the head of the table, barely acknowledging my presence as he scrolled through his phone. This had become his usual behavior over the past year. He would grunt responses to direct questions and spend most of dinner typing furiously on his device. "Marcus, honey, could you put that away? We're having family time," Emma said softly, almost apologetically. He looked up with irritation. "This is important work stuff, Emma. Some of us have real responsibilities." The way he emphasized real felt like a deliberate jab at me, a retired forensic accountant living on a modest pension. Emma's face flushed with embarrassment. "Of course, I didn't mean—" "It's fine, sweetheart," I interrupted, not wanting to see her apologize for something so reasonable. But the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Throughout dinner, I watched Marcus closely. Something about his behavior felt different, more aggressive than his usual dismissiveness. When Jake asked him to help with homework, Marcus snapped, "Ask your mother, I'm busy." When Sophie accidentally knocked over her juice cup, he stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped against the floor. "I need some air," he muttered, stepping onto the back porch with his phone pressed to his ear. Through the sliding door, I could hear fragments of his conversation. Words like payment, deadline, and consequences drifted inside. Emma pretended not to notice, busying herself with cleaning up Sophie's spill, but I saw her hands trembling slightly. After dinner, while Emma bathed the children, Marcus returned to the living room where I was helping Jake with his math homework. He stood behind us watching, his presence making both Jake and me uncomfortable. "You know, Samuel," he said, using my name with a cold formality that always grated on me, "you should be careful about filling these kids' heads with outdated ideas. The world's changed since your time." I looked up from Jake's worksheet. "What do you mean?" "I mean teaching them that hard work and honesty are enough to succeed. That's not how things work anymore." His smile was sharp, predatory. "You have to be smart. You have to take opportunities when they come, regardless of what some people might think is right or wrong." Jake looked between us, confused by the tension. I forced a smile and ruffled his hair. "Let's finish this problem, buddy." Marcus left shortly after, kissing Emma goodbye and barely acknowledging the children. It wasn't until I was getting ready to leave myself that Emma discovered his phone on the kitchen counter. "Oh no, he'll need this for work tomorrow," she said, picking up the device. "Dad, would you mind dropping it off at his office in the morning? I can't leave the kids, and he has that early meeting." I took the phone, feeling its weight in my palm. "Of course, honey, no problem." As I drove home, something nagged at me. Marcus's behavior tonight had been stranger than usual, more on edge. The phone calls, the cryptic comments about taking opportunities regardless of right or wrong, the way Emma seemed to walk on eggshells around him. Back in my apartment, I set the phone on my kitchen table and stared at it. I'd always prided myself on respecting others' privacy. 30 years as a forensic accountant had taught me the importance of proper procedures, of obtaining evidence legally and ethically. But this was my daughter's family, my grandchildren. The phone buzzed with an incoming message, the screen lighting up briefly. I caught a glimpse of words that made my blood run cold. "Time's running out. They're getting suspicious." My hand shook as I picked up the device. The message was from someone named Tony, and there were dozens of other messages in the thread. My experience told me to stop, to respect boundaries, but my instincts as a father screamed that something was very wrong. I unlocked the phone. Marcus had never been careful about security, and I had seen him enter his passcode countless times. The messages that filled the screen made my stomach drop. Tony: "The audit starts Monday. If they find the missing funds, we're all dead." Marcus: "I can move more tomorrow. Emma doesn't suspect anything." Tony: "You better hope not. These people don't mess around. Your wife and kids would make perfect leverage if needed." I sank into my kitchen chair, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give out. There were dozens of similar messages going back months, references to moved funds, offshore accounts, and untraceable transfers. Screenshots of bank statements showing massive withdrawals from what appeared to be corporate accounts. But it was the threats against Emma and the children that made me feel physically sick. These weren't just white-collar criminals. They were dangerous people who had already threatened my family. I scrolled through more messages, my forensic accountant brain automatically cataloging evidence, even as my grandfather's heart broke. Marcus had been stealing from his company, but it was worse than simple embezzlement. He was working with a network of people who laundered money through shell companies, and now an internal audit was closing in. The final message in the thread was from earlier that evening, sent while we were having dinner. "If this goes south, I'm taking your family down with me. They know where you live." I set the phone down with trembling hands and walked to my living room window. Across the street, a dark sedan was parked under a broken streetlight, its occupants barely visible in the shadows. Had it been there when I came home? I couldn't remember. Looking at the photo of Margaret on my mantel, I felt her presence as clearly as if she were sitting beside me. "What do I do, sweetheart?" I whispered to her image. "How do I protect them?" The answer came to me with crystal clarity. I couldn't confront Marcus directly. That would only put Emma and the children in immediate danger. I couldn't warn Emma without proof. She wouldn't believe me, and Marcus would know his phone had been compromised. But I could do what I did best. I could investigate, gather evidence, and build an airtight case that would not only put Marcus and his associates away, but protect my family from retaliation. I had 48 hours before Marcus would expect his phone back. 48 hours to photograph every message, every document, every piece of evidence that could save Emma and my grandchildren from a nightmare they didn't even know they were living. As I pulled out my camera and began documenting the contents of Marcus's phone, one thought echoed in my mind. I had failed to protect Margaret from cancer, but I would not fail to protect Emma from this. The dark sedan was still there when I finally went to bed at 3 a.m, but I was no longer afraid. I was a man with a mission, and nothing would stop me from saving my family. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's face, the way she had flinched when Marcus raised his voice at dinner. How long had she been living in fear? How had I been so blind to what was happening right in front of me? By dawn, I had photographed every message, every document, and every suspicious file on Marcus's phone. The evidence was damning, but it was also terrifying. Marcus wasn't just stealing money. He was involved with people who thought nothing of threatening women and children to protect their operations. The morning news was playing softly in the background when Emma called at 7:30. Her voice sounded strained, almost breathless. "Dad, I'm so sorry to bother you this early, but Marcus is frantic about his phone. He needs it for his presentation today. Could you possibly bring it by before 9? I could hear Marcus in the background, his voice sharp and demanding. "Tell him to hurry up. I don't have time for his old man routine today." "Of course, honey. I'll be right over," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. When I arrived at their house, Marcus was pacing the living room like a caged animal. He barely acknowledged my greeting before snatching the phone from my hands and immediately checking his messages. I watched his face carefully. The relief when he saw no new messages, followed by the paranoid way he scrolled through his recent activity. "Everything okay?" I asked casually. His eyes snapped to mine, searching for any sign that I might have seen something. "Fine, just work stress. You wouldn't understand." Emma appeared from the kitchen, still in her robe, the children eating breakfast behind her. In the morning light, she looked even more fragile than she had the night before. There were fresh worry lines around her eyes, and she kept glancing nervously at Marcus. "Dad, would you like some coffee?" she offered, but Marcus cut her off. "He can't stay. I need to get to the office, and you need to take Jake to his doctor's appointment." He grabbed his jacket and briefcase, pausing only to look back at me. "Thanks for bringing this by, Samuel. I'll make sure to be more careful with it in the future." The emphasis on careful sent a chill down my spine. He suspected something. After Marcus left, I lingered with Emma, helping her get the children ready for their day. Jake had been complaining of stomach aches for weeks, and now I wondered if it was stress from the tension at home. "Emma, sweetheart, is everything all right?" "You seem tired lately," I said as gently as I could. She paused in the middle of packing Jake's backpack, her hand stilling on the zipper. For a moment, I thought she might open up, might tell me what was really going on. But then she forced a bright smile and shook her head. "Just the usual mom exhaustion, you know. Marcus has been working extra hours lately, so I'm handling more of the household stuff." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "It's nothing I can't handle. If you ever need help, or if there's anything worrying you—" "Dad," she interrupted, her voice firm but kind. "I'm fine. We're fine. Marcus is just stressed about work, but it'll pass." The way she said it, quick and rehearsed, told me she had given this same speech before, probably to herself night after night, trying to convince herself that everything was normal. As I drove home, my mind raced with questions. How long had Marcus been stealing? When had the threat started? And most importantly, what would happen to Emma and the children when his crimes inevitably came to light? I spent the rest of the morning researching Marcus's company, Meridian Financial Services. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 other employees had been arrested for embezzlement in the past year, and there were rumors of a federal investigation into money laundering operations. Marcus wasn't just stealing from petty cash. He was part of a much larger criminal enterprise. But it was the personal cost that really terrified me. As I dug deeper into the case files from my old contacts at the FBI, I found stories of families torn apart when financial crimes came to light. Wives who lost everything, children who had to change schools and identities, families who lived in constant fear of retaliation from criminal associates. That afternoon, I made a decision that would haunt me for weeks. I called my old colleague, Detective Maria Rodriguez, who now worked in the Financial Crimes Unit. "Samuel Chen," she said warmly when she answered. "I was wondering when you'd get bored with retirement and call me." "Maria, I need your help with something sensitive. It involves my family." The warmth in her voice immediately shifted to professional concern. "What's going on?" I explained the situation carefully, without mentioning how I had obtained the evidence. Maria listened without interruption, asking only a few clarifying questions. "Samuel, this sounds like the Meridian case we've been building. If your son-in-law is involved, he's in serious trouble. These people don't just steal money, they're connected to organized crime." My hands tightened on the phone. "What about my daughter and grandchildren? If Marcus gets arrested—" "That's the complicated part," Maria said quietly. "If he's cooperating with these people, his family could be in danger whether he gets arrested or not. Criminal organizations don't like loose ends. So, what do I do? Officially, I can't tell you to investigate on your own. Unofficially, if you could gather enough evidence to help us move quickly, we might be able to offer your family protection before word gets out." After hanging up, I sat in my living room, staring at the photos of Emma growing up. Her first day of school, her graduation, her wedding day. In every picture, she was smiling, trusting, believing in the goodness of the world. How had I let her marry someone who would put her in this kind of danger? The memory hit me like a physical blow. 5 years ago, when Emma first brought Marcus home, I had run a background check on him. It was nothing personal, just something I did automatically after 30 years in forensic accounting. Everything had come back clean, but there had been one small detail that bothered me. Marcus had graduated from college with mediocre grades, but somehow landed a high-paying job at a prestigious financial firm immediately after graduation. I had mentioned it to Margaret, who had laughed and said I was being overprotective. Not everyone needs to struggle to succeed, honey. Maybe he's just lucky. But luck like that usually came with a price. Now I knew what that price was. That evening I drove past Emma's house twice, checking for the dark sedan I had seen the night before. It wasn't there, but a different car, a white panel van, was parked 3 houses down with a clear view of Emma's front door. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Kids want to know if Grandpa can come for movie night Friday. Marcus will be working late again." I stared at the message, my heart breaking. Emma was trying to maintain normalcy, to give the children happy memories, even as her world was falling apart around her. She had no idea that her husband's late work nights were probably meetings with criminals, or that the financial pressure she thought was temporary was actually the beginning of a catastrophe that could destroy everything she had built. But I knew, and I was the only one who could stop it. I typed back, "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Love you all." As I hit send, I made another decision. I wouldn't wait for the FBI to build their case slowly and carefully. I would gather evidence faster than they ever could, using every skill I had learned in 30 years of following money trails and exposing financial crimes. I would protect Emma and my grandchildren, even if it meant destroying her marriage, even if it meant she might never forgive me. Because sometimes being a father means making the hardest choice of all, choosing your child's safety over their happiness, their future over their present, their life over their love. And I would make that choice as many times as necessary. The next 3 weeks became a carefully orchestrated dance of deception. Every morning, I would call Emma with some excuse to visit, bringing groceries, helping with yard work, taking the kids to the park. Marcus grew increasingly suspicious of my frequent presence, but Emma seemed grateful for the help. What neither of them knew was that I was documenting everything. Every conversation Marcus had in the backyard, every mysterious phone call, every time he left the house at odd hours. I had purchased a small digital recorder and a telephoto camera lens, tools that reminded me of my early days investigating corporate fraud. The break I needed came on a Wednesday afternoon. Emma had asked me to watch the children while she went to Jake's parent-teacher conference. Marcus was supposed to be at work, but I had been tracking his movements and knew he often came home during lunch breaks to make private calls. Sure enough, at exactly 12:30, his car pulled into the driveway. I was in the living room with Sophie, reading her a story. When I heard his key in the lock, he froze when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" "Emma asked me to watch Sophie while she's at the school," I said calmly, not looking up from the picture book. "She should be back in about an hour." Marcus muttered something under his breath and headed straight for his home office. Within minutes, I could hear him on a heated phone call. I waited until Sophie was absorbed in her coloring book, then quietly moved closer to the office door. "I don't care what the audit found," Marcus was saying, his voice tight with panic. "The transfer was supposed to be untraceable. How did they connect it to my department?" There was a long pause as the person on the other end spoke. Marcus's responses grew increasingly agitated. "No, absolutely not. My family doesn't know anything. Emma thinks I'm working overtime to pay for the kids' college funds." A bitter laugh. "She has no idea the money's already gone." My blood turned to ice. College funds. Emma had mentioned several times how proud she was that Marcus was setting aside money for the children's education. She had even shown me the quarterly statements, beaming with pride at their financial responsibility. It had all been a lie. "Look, Tony, I need more time," Marcus continued. "The federal investigators are sniffing around, but they don't have solid proof yet. If we can move the remaining funds offshore by Friday, we're home free." There was another pause, and when Marcus spoke again, his voice was cold in a way that made my skin crawl. "If you're thinking about cutting me loose, remember that I have records of every transaction, every account number, every name. If I go down, everyone goes down, including your people in Chicago." I backed away from the door as quietly as possible, my mind racing. Marcus wasn't just stealing money, he was blackmailing his criminal associates. That made him infinitely more dangerous, both to them and to his own family. 20 minutes later, Marcus left the house without saying goodbye to Sophie or me. I waited until his car disappeared around the corner, then made my move. His home office was locked, but I had learned a few things about picking simple locks during my years investigating white-collar crime. The file cabinet contained exactly what I expected: bank statements, transfer records, and correspondence with offshore financial institutions. But it was the manila folder marked insurance that made my hands shake. Inside were detailed records of Emma's daily routines: what time she took the kids to school, where she shopped for groceries, which route she took to the doctor's office. There were even photographs taken from a distance: Emma loading groceries into her car, the children playing in the backyard, me helping Jake with his bicycle. At the bottom of the folder was a handwritten note in Marcus's writing: emergency leverage if cooperation becomes problematic. I photographed everything with trembling fingers, my grandmother's voice echoing in my head: when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Marcus had shown me exactly who he was: a man who would use his own wife and children as bargaining chips to save himself. That evening, I met with Detective Rodriguez at a small diner on the other side of town. I handed her a flash drive containing everything I had gathered. "Samuel, this is incredible work," she said after reviewing the files on her laptop. "You've given us enough evidence to arrest not just Marcus, but at least 6 other people in this network. What about Emma and the children?" Maria's expression grew serious. "Based on what you've shown me, they're in immediate danger. Marcus is planning something for Friday that's only 2 days away. If he suspects he's about to be arrested, or if his criminal associates decide he's too much of a liability—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. I had seen enough crime scenes in my career to know what happened to people who became inconvenient to organized criminals. "We need to move fast," Maria continued, "but we also need to be careful. If Marcus realizes he's under investigation, he might panic and run. Or worse, he might try to use his family as human shields. So what's the plan?" "We're going to set up surveillance on your daughter's house starting tomorrow. Meanwhile, I need you to find a reason to get Emma and the children out of town this weekend. Somewhere safe, somewhere Marcus can't find them if things go wrong." I drove home with my mind spinning. How could I convince Emma to leave town without arousing Marcus's suspicions? And more importantly, how could I live with myself if something happened to them because of my investigation? The answer came to me as I pulled into my apartment complex. Margaret's sister lived in Portland, Oregon, and she had been asking Emma to visit for months. If I could create some kind of family emergency? I spent the next morning crafting the perfect lie. I called Emma, putting just the right amount of worry in my voice. "Honey, I just got off the phone with Aunt Linda. Uncle Robert had a heart attack last night. He's stable, but Linda is beside herself. She really needs family support right now." Emma's intake of breath was sharp with concern. "Oh my God, is he going to be okay?" "The doctors think so, but it was touch and go for a while. Linda specifically asked if you could come out for a few days. You know how much you mean to her, especially after your mother." I let the sentence trail off, knowing that Emma's guilt over not being there when Margaret died would motivate her to action. "Of course I'll go. I'll need to arrange for time off work and the kids will miss some school, but family comes first." She paused. "I should talk to Marcus about it tonight." "Actually, sweetheart, Linda was hoping you could come as soon as possible. Maybe even tomorrow? I could help with the travel arrangements." "Tomorrow? That's very short notice. Marcus has been so stressed about work lately, and with his big presentation on Friday." "This is exactly the kind of emergency Marcus would understand," I said firmly. "And Linda really needs you, Emma. You're the only one who can help her through this." There was a long silence, and I could practically hear Emma weighing her obligations to her husband against her love for her family. "You're right," she said finally. "I'll book flights for tomorrow morning. Can you pick us up and drive us to the airport?" "Of course." "And Emma, pack for at least a week. Linda might need more support than we initially thought." That evening, I sat in my car across the street from Emma's house, watching through the living room window as she told Marcus about the trip. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in his body language, the way he gestured angrily when she mentioned leaving the next day. My phone rang. It was Emma, and she sounded upset. "Dad, Marcus isn't happy about me leaving so suddenly. He says it's bad timing with everything going on at work." "What did you tell him?" That family emergencies don't wait for convenient timing, but he's really angry. He's been pacing around the house for the past hour, making phone calls in his office. Lady, through my telephoto lens, I could see Marcus gesticulating wildly as he spoke into his phone. Whatever conversations he was having, they were heated. Emma, listen to me carefully, I said. Pack tonight after Marcus goes to sleep. Pack everything you might need for an extended stay. And don't tell him exactly what time your flight leaves. Dad, you're scaring me. Is there something you're not telling me about Uncle Robert? The lie came easier than it should have. I'm just worried about Linda, and I want you to be prepared for anything. Sometimes these medical situations take longer to resolve than we expect. After hanging up, I called Detective Rodriguez. The family is leaving tomorrow morning, I reported. But Marcus is suspicious. You need to be ready to move if he tries to stop them. We'll have unmarked units positioned around the house tonight and at the airport tomorrow. Samuel, you've done everything you can. Now we have to trust the system to work. But as I watched Marcus's silhouette moving back and forth behind the office window, making call after call, I knew that the next 24 hours would determine whether my investigation had saved my family or put them in even greater danger. The hardest part wasn't the evidence gathering or the lies I had to tell. The hardest part was knowing that by Friday, Emma's entire world would collapse, and she would have to live with the knowledge that the man she loved had been willing to sacrifice her and their children to save himself. I could only pray that when the truth came out, she would understand that everything I had done was born from love, not betrayal. Thursday morning arrived with an unseasonable chill that seemed to seep into my bones. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours, my mind cycling through everything that could go wrong. At 5:30, I was already dressed and nursing my third cup of coffee when my phone rang. It was Emma, and her voice was strained. Dad, I think Marcus suspects something. He was up all night making phone calls, and this morning he asked me 3 times what flight I was taking. He even offered to drive us to the airport himself. My grip tightened on the phone. What did you tell him? That you were already planning to drive us, and that I wanted to spend the car ride catching up with you. But Dad, he's acting so strange. When I was packing last night, I caught him going through my suitcase. He said he was just trying to help, but it felt like he was checking to see what I was taking. Marcus was getting paranoid, which made him infinitely more dangerous. In my experience investigating financial crimes, the moment criminals started suspecting their world was collapsing, they became unpredictable. Emma, I want you and the children ready to leave the house by 7:30. Don't wait for Marcus to say goodbye if he's not ready. We can't miss that flight. Okay, but no buts, sweetheart. Uncle Robert needs you, and every hour we delay makes things harder for Aunt Linda. At 7:15, I pulled into Emma's driveway. Through the living room window, I could see Marcus in his business suit, phone pressed to his ear, gesticulating wildly. Emma appeared at the front door with Sophie in her arms and the boys trailing behind with their backpacks. Marcus followed them outside, still talking on his phone. As I helped load the luggage into my car, I caught fragments of his conversation. No, I can't do it today. My wife is leaving town, and I need to... Yes, I understand the timeline, but things are complicated right now. He ended the call and approached my car with a forced smile. Samuel, thank you for helping with this family emergency. I really appreciate you stepping in when I can't get away from work. His words were polite, but his eyes were cold, calculating. He was studying my face, looking for any sign that I knew more than I was letting on. Of course, Marcus, family comes first. I met his gaze steadily, drawing on 30 years of experience interviewing suspects who thought they were smarter than everyone around them. He leaned down to kiss Emma goodbye, but I noticed his hand linger on her shoulder, gripping it just a little too tightly. You call me the moment you land, understand? And I want updates every day about Robert's condition. Of course, Emma said, but I could hear the slight tremor in her voice. As we drove away, I watched Marcus in my rearview mirror. He stood in the driveway until we turned the corner, his phone already back at his ear. Dad, I feel terrible leaving Marcus when he's so stressed about work, Emma said, settling Sophie into her car seat. Maybe I should have waited until next week. You made the right choice, I said firmly. Marcus will be fine. He's a grown man who can take care of himself for a few days. If only she knew how well he had been taking care of himself, stealing money and putting their family in danger. The drive to the airport should have taken 45 minutes, but I took a circuitous route, checking my mirrors constantly for any sign we were being followed. Detective Rodriguez had assured me that unmarked units would be watching for any suspicious activity, but I wasn't taking any chances. At the airport, I waited until Emma and the children had gone through security before calling Rodriguez. "They're safe," I reported. "Flight leaves in 2 hours. But Marcus is definitely suspicious. He was making heated phone calls all morning. We know. We've been monitoring his communications since yesterday. Samuel, there's something you need to know. Marcus isn't planning to wait until Friday. Our surveillance team picked up chatter about a major money transfer happening tonight." My blood ran cold. "Tonight? It gets worse. Based on the conversations we've intercepted, Marcus told his associates that his family was going out of town, and they took that as a sign that he was preparing to run. They're not happy about it." "What does that mean?" "It means Marcus is now a liability to some very dangerous people. If they think he's going to disappear with their money or cooperate with law enforcement, they might decide to eliminate the problem permanently." I sank into an airport chair, my legs suddenly unsteady. "Are you saying Marcus is in physical danger?" "I'm saying everyone connected to this situation is in danger, including you, Samuel. These people have been watching your daughter's house for weeks. They know you've been spending a lot of time there." Rodriguez's words hit me like a physical blow. In my focus on protecting Emma and the children, I had made myself a target. And worse, my investigation might have accelerated the timeline for whatever Marcus and his criminal associates were planning. "What do I do?" "Come in. We need to debrief you completely and make sure you're in a safe location when we make our move." "When will that be?" "Tonight. We can't wait any longer. Marcus is scheduled to make another transfer at midnight, and based on our intelligence, his associates are planning to tie up loose ends immediately afterward. The FBI field office was a fortress of glass and steel that I had visited many times during my career, but never as someone whose family was in danger. Detective Rodriguez met me in the lobby and escorted me through security to a small conference room where 3 other agents were waiting. "Samuel Chen," Rodriguez said, "meet Special Agent Catherine Walsh, our lead investigator on the Meridian case." Agent Walsh was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of Margaret when she was focused on solving a difficult problem. "Mr. Chen, you've provided us with exceptional intelligence, but we need to fill in some gaps before tonight's operation." She opened a thick file and spread photographs across the table. "Can you identify any of these people as individuals you've seen near your daughter's residence?" I studied the photos carefully. Most of the faces were unfamiliar, but one made my stomach clench. "This man," I said, pointing to a photo of a heavy-set man with a scar across his left cheek. "I saw him in a white van parked near Emma's house last Tuesday. He was there for at least 3 hours." Agent Walsh exchanged glances with Rodriguez. "That's Vincent Torino. He's known for making problems disappear permanently." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. These people weren't just white-collar criminals. They were killers. "Mr. Chen, I need you to understand something," Agent Walsh continued. "Your son-in-law isn't just stealing money. Based on the evidence you've provided and our ongoing investigation, Marcus has been facilitating money laundering for a criminal organization with ties to organized crime. The people he's working with don't tolerate betrayal or incompetence." "Oh, nah. Are you saying Marcus might be killed?" "I'm saying that if Marcus's associates believe he's become a liability, they won't hesitate to eliminate him, and they might decide that his family knows too much to be left alive." The room spun around me. In my determination to protect Emma and the children, I had uncovered something far more dangerous than simple embezzlement. "But they're safe now," I said desperately. "They're 3,000 miles away." "For now," Agent Walsh said gently. "But these organizations have resources and connections across the country. If they decide your family needs to be silenced, distance won't protect them for long." "So what's the plan?" Rodriguez leaned forward. "Tonight, we're going to arrest Marcus and as many of his associates as possible. We'll use the evidence you provided to freeze their accounts and seize their assets. But Samuel, we need your help with one more thing. Anything. Marcus doesn't know that we're coming. He's expecting to complete his final transfer tonight and then disappear. We need him to feel secure enough to proceed with his plans, which means maintaining the illusion that everything is normal. Agent Walsh slid a prepaid cell phone across the table. We need you to go home and act like nothing has changed. If Marcus calls you, answer normally. If he asks about Emma and the children, tell him they arrived safely and that Robert is stable. Don't give him any reason to suspect that his world is about to collapse. And if he comes to my apartment, we'll have agents positioned nearby. But Mr. Chen, I need to be honest with you. The next 12 hours are going to be extremely dangerous. Marcus is desperate, and desperate people make irrational decisions. As I left the FBI building with the prepaid phone and a direct number to reach Rodriguez, one thought dominated my mind. What if I had made everything worse? What if my investigation had pushed Marcus and his criminal associates to a point where they felt they had nothing left to lose? The apartment felt different when I returned, charged with an electricity that made the air feel thick and oppressive. I checked every lock, closed every curtain, and found myself jumping at every small sound. At 8:30, the prepaid phone rang. It was a text from Marcus. "How is everyone? Emma hasn't called yet." I stared at the message for a long time before responding, "Just landed. Robert is stable. Emma will call once they get settled at Linda's house." His response came immediately. "Good. Tell her I love her." I set the phone down with shaking hands. In less than 4 hours, Marcus's entire life would implode. He would be arrested, his crimes exposed, his family's life destroyed. And despite everything he had done, despite the danger he had put Emma and the children in, I felt a strange sadness for the man who had once made my daughter smile. But there was no going back now. The wheels were in motion, and by dawn, one way or another, this nightmare would be over. I just prayed that when the dust settled, my family would still be whole. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. I sat in my living room chair, the prepaid phone within reach, watching the digital clock on my cable box change minute by minute. 9:15, 9:30, 10 o'clock. Each passing moment brought us closer to midnight, when Marcus would attempt his final transfer and the FBI would spring their trap. At 10:45, my landline rang. The caller ID showed Emma's number. "Dad, we made it safely." Emma's voice was tired but relieved. "The kids were troopers on the flight. Uncle Robert looks better than I expected, though Aunt Linda is still pretty shaken up." I closed my eyes, grateful that my family was 3,000 miles away from whatever was about to unfold. "I'm so glad you're there, sweetheart. How are the kids adjusting?" "They're excited to be somewhere new. Jake and Sam are already asking if they can stay an extra week." Emma laughed, and for a moment she sounded like the carefree daughter I remembered from before Marcus. "I should probably call Marcus and let him know we arrived safely." "That's a good idea. He's been worried about you." If only she knew how much Marcus had to worry about, besides their travel arrangements. After Emma hung up, the silence in my apartment felt oppressive. I found myself pacing from room to room, checking and rechecking the locks, peering through the curtains at the empty street below. The FBI had assured me that surveillance teams were in position, but I felt utterly alone. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Rodriguez. "Operation commencing. Stay inside and keep your phone on." This was it. After weeks of investigation, after putting my family in danger, after lies and deception and sleepless nights, the moment of truth had finally arrived. I made myself a cup of tea and settled back into my chair, trying to distract myself with late-night television. But every sound from the hallway, every car that passed on the street below, made my heart race. At 12:15, another text arrived. "Complications. Subject not at expected location." My blood turned to ice. Marcus wasn't where he was supposed to be. The carefully planned operation was falling apart. I was reaching for the phone to call Rodriguez when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Heavy, urgent footsteps that stopped directly in front of my door. The pounding that followed was violent, desperate. Bang, bang, bang. "Samuel, I know you're in there. Open this door." Marcus's voice was wild, unhinged in a way I had never heard before. I grabbed the prepaid phone and quickly texted Rodriguez. "He's here, at my apartment." The pounding continued, more frantic now. "Samuel, open the door!" I approached the door slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the peephole, I could see Marcus in the hallway. His hair disheveled, his usually perfect business attire, wrinkled and stained. His eyes were wild, darting back and forth like a cornered animal. "Marcus, it's very late," I called through the door, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's wrong?" "You know exactly what's wrong, you old bastard." His voice cracked with desperation and rage. "They were waiting for me, at the office, at the bank, everywhere I went tonight. Someone tipped them off, and we both know who it was." My mouth went dry. Somehow, Marcus had evaded the FBI's net and figured out that I was behind his exposure, which meant I was now trapped in my apartment with a desperate criminal who had nothing left to lose. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, backing away from the door. "If you're in some kind of trouble, don't lie to me." The door shook under the force of his pounding. "I saw you, Samuel. I saw you taking pictures of my phone that night. I saw you following me, watching my house. You've been investigating me for weeks." My phone buzzed with a text. "Units en route. Keep him talking." I needed to buy time for the FBI to arrive, but I also needed to keep Marcus from doing something that would put both of us in danger. "Marcus, whatever's going on, we can work it out. Just calm down and—" "Calm down?" His laugh was sharp, hysterical. "They froze my accounts, Samuel, all of them. The offshore transfers, the emergency funds, everything. And when I couldn't deliver the money tonight, Tony made it very clear what happens to people who disappoint his organization." The desperation in his voice was palpable. Marcus wasn't just angry. He was terrified. "Where are Emma and the children?" he demanded suddenly. "They're not at Linda's house. I called the hotel. I called the hospital. Uncle Robert isn't even sick, is he?" My silence was answer enough. "You sent them away," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You knew this was going to happen, and you sent my family away." "I was protecting them," I said firmly. "From you. From the people you've been working with. From the mess you created." Another violent impact against the door. Protecting them? From their own father? From a man who was using them as leverage with criminals? I shot back, my own anger finally breaking through. "I saw the files, Marcus. The surveillance photos of Emma and the children. The notes about using them as emergency leverage if your cooperation became problematic." The pounding stopped. In the sudden silence, I could hear Marcus breathing heavily on the other side of the door. "You don't understand," he said finally, his voice broken. "I never wanted any of this to happen. It started small, just moving some money around to help a friend. But then they had records, evidence. They said if I didn't keep helping them, they'd ruin me, they'd hurt Emma. So you decided to steal more money? To put your family in even more danger?" "I was trying to get enough to disappear," Marcus shouted. "To take Emma and the kids somewhere safe where these people could never find us. But you ruined everything." The irony was devastating. In his twisted way, Marcus believed he had been protecting his family, just as I had been protecting mine. But his methods had put them in the very danger he was trying to avoid. "Marcus, listen to me," I said, pressing my hand against the door. "It's over. The FBI knows everything. The only way to protect Emma and the children now is to cooperate with the authorities." "Cooperate?" His laugh was bitter. "You have no idea what these people are capable of. If I cooperate, if I testify against them, they'll hunt down Emma and the kids just to send a message." My phone buzzed again. 2 minutes out. I needed to keep Marcus talking just a little longer. "So, what's your plan?" I asked. "Break down my door? Force me to tell you where they are? Then what?" "Then I take my family somewhere these people will never find them. South America, Asia, somewhere we can start over." "With what money, Marcus? You said they froze your accounts." Silence. "Marcus?" When he spoke again, his voice was cold, calculating. "You're going to help me get them back, Samuel? You're going to call Emma and tell her there's been another emergency, that Uncle Robert took a turn for the worse, and she needs to come home immediately." "I won't do that." "Yes, you will." There was something new in his voice now, something that made my skin crawl. "Because if you don't, I'm going to tell Tony and his people exactly where to find Emma and the children. I may be finished, but I can still make sure you lose everything too. The threat hit me like a physical blow. Even trapped and desperate, Marcus was still thinking like the manipulative criminal he had become. You would threaten your own children? I would do anything to protect them, Marcus said, even if it means protecting them from you. That's when I heard it. The sound of multiple vehicles pulling up outside my building, car doors slamming, heavy footsteps on the stairs. Marcus heard it too. What did you do? He whispered. I stepped closer to the door. I did what you should have done months ago. I called for help. The footsteps were getting closer, echoing through the stairwell. Marcus's breathing became rapid, panicked. Samuel, please, he said, his voice suddenly small, almost childlike. I just want my family back. I just want to fix this. For a moment, I felt a stab of pity for the man who had destroyed everything he claimed to love. It's too late for that, Marcus. But it's not too late to do the right thing. The footsteps reached my floor. I could hear quiet voices in the hallway, the sound of tactical equipment. Marcus Daniels, a voice boomed through the hallway. FBI, you're surrounded. What happened next would forever be burned into my memory. Marcus let out a sound that was part scream, part sob. Then came the impact, not against my door this time, but against my living room window. I rushed to look outside and saw Marcus in the courtyard below, 3 stories down, his body motionless on the concrete. The door to my apartment burst open as FBI agents flooded in, but it was too late. Marcus had chosen his own ending to a story that had spiraled far beyond his control. As paramedics worked frantically over Marcus's broken body and Detective Rodriguez questioned me about the events leading up to his fall, one thought echoed in my mind. How was I going to tell Emma that in trying to save her family, I had destroyed it completely? 6 months have passed since that terrible night, and I'm sitting in my kitchen watching my grandsons help Emma make pancakes for breakfast. The sound of their laughter fills the small space, a melody I wasn't sure I'd ever hear again after everything that happened. The weeks following Marcus's death were the darkest of my life. Emma returned from Portland devastated, not just by the loss of her husband, but by the revelation of who he truly was. The FBI investigation uncovered the full scope of Marcus's crimes, over $2 million stolen from his company, money laundering operations spanning 3 states, and connections to organized crime figures who were now facing federal charges. But it was the personal betrayal that cut deepest. When Agent Walsh showed Emma the surveillance files Marcus had kept on her and the children, my daughter collapsed in a way that reminded me of how she'd looked as a little girl after scraping her knee. Except this was a wound that couldn't be fixed with a bandage and a kiss. How long did you know? She asked me that first day back, sitting in my living room while the children napped upstairs. Her voice was hollow, empty, of the warmth I'd known for 35 years. 3 weeks, I told her honestly, from the night he forgot his phone until the night he died. She stared at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. You should have told me. Would you have believed me? The question hung between us like a wall neither of us knew how to scale. We both knew the answer. Emma had been so isolated, so conditioned to doubt her own instincts, that she would have defended Marcus against any accusation, including mine. I thought I was protecting you, I continued. I thought if I could gather enough evidence, the authorities could handle everything quietly. I never imagined it would end the way it did. He's dead because of what you did, she said, her voice breaking. He's dead because of what he did, I replied gently but firmly. Marcus made every choice that led to that moment. I just tried to protect you and the children from the consequences. It took weeks of grief, counseling, family therapy, and long conversations for Emma to begin processing the truth. Marcus hadn't been the devoted husband and father she thought she'd married. He had been a criminal who put their family in danger, who was prepared to use his own children as leverage with murderers and thieves. The financial devastation was staggering. The house was seized as part of the asset forfeiture. Emma's savings account, which she'd thought contained $20,000, was empty. Marcus had been using it to cover his illegal activities. The children's college funds, which had shown steady growth on quarterly statements, had never existed. Emma and the children moved in with me temporarily, cramming into my small 2-bedroom apartment while we figured out how to rebuild from nothing. Jake and Sam, now 9, struggled with nightmares and behavioral problems. Sophie, only 5, kept asking when Daddy was coming home, not understanding why everyone cried when she mentioned him. The media attention was relentless for the first month. Reporters camped outside my building, wanting to interview the heroic grandfather who exposed his son-in-law's crimes. I refused every request. There was nothing heroic about what I'd done. I was simply a father trying to protect his child. But slowly, gradually, we began to heal. Emma found work as a nurse at the community hospital, the same job she'd held before marrying Marcus. The pay was modest, but it came with health insurance and the satisfaction of helping others, something she desperately needed after feeling so helpless for so long. We established new routines. Mornings became sacred time when Emma and I would have coffee together before the children woke up, talking about practical things like school schedules and grocery lists, rebuilding trust through small, everyday conversations. The children adapted with the resilience that only young people possess. Jake's stomach aches disappeared once he realized the adults in his life were no longer constantly tense and afraid. Sam discovered a love of reading during the long, quiet evenings in my small apartment. Sophie, young enough to accept change as natural, began calling my apartment home without any prompting. 3 months after Marcus's death, Emma made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She decided not to move out. "I know this place is small," she said one evening as we watched the children do homework at my kitchen table, "but for the first time in years, I feel safe. We all do." I looked around my modest apartment, seeing it through her eyes. Yes, it was small. The children shared the spare bedroom, sleeping on bunk beds we'd bought secondhand. Emma slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. We had one bathroom and a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people, but it was ours. No one could take it away from us. No criminal associates knew where we lived. No one was monitoring our movements or keeping files on our daily routines. "If you're sure," as I said, "we'll make it work." And we did. We converted the small den into a proper bedroom for Emma. We bought a dining table that could seat 5. We hung family photos on the walls, new photos, taken after our world collapsed, and we began building something better from the pieces. The legal aftermath took months to resolve. The FBI's investigation led to the arrest of 12 people in Marcus's criminal network, including the man who had threatened our family. Emma testified at several trials. Her quiet dignity in the face of defense attorneys' attempts to paint Marcus as a victim, earning the respect of prosecutors and judges alike. The financial recovery was slower. Emma was able to claim victim status in the federal case, which provided some restitution from seized assets. It wasn't much, a few $1,000s that barely covered the cost of starting over, but it was enough to buy school clothes for the children and put a small emergency fund in the bank. More importantly, Emma began to trust her own judgment again. She enrolled in a graduate program to become a nurse practitioner, determined to build a career that could support her family independently. She made new friends among her classmates, women who knew nothing about her past and accepted her for who she was becoming, not who she had been. The children thrived in ways that surprised everyone. Jake, freed from the constant tension that had marked his early years, excelled in school and made friends easily. Sam discovered a talent for art, spending hours drawing pictures of our new life, always with all 5 of us together, always smiling. Sophie, now 6, started first grade with a confidence that spoke to how secure she felt in our unconventional household. Tonight, as I watch Emma help Sophie with her reading homework while the boys build an elaborate castle out of blocks, I realize something profound has happened. We didn't just survive Marcus's betrayal, we escaped it. We're free in ways we never were when we were living his lie. Emma looks up from Sophie's book and catches me watching them. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. "Just how much I love Sunday evenings," I tell her, which is true, but not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I'm thinking about second chances, about how sometimes the worst thing that can happen to a family becomes the thing that saves it, about how love, real love, isn't about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It's about showing up every day, especially when showing up is hard. Emma smiles, the first completely unguarded smile I've seen from her since she was a teenager. Me too, she says. I love this life we're building. Later, after the children are asleep and Emma is studying for her graduate exams, I sit on my small balcony, looking out at the city lights. My phone rings. It's Detective Rodriguez, checking in as she does every few months. How's everyone doing? She asks. We're good, I tell her. Really good. Any regrets about how everything played out? It's a question she's asked before, and my answer is always the same. I regret that Marcus made the choices he did. I regret that Emma and the children had to go through so much pain, but I don't regret protecting my family. After we hang up, I think about Marcus, as I do most evenings. I wonder if he ever really understood what he was risking, if he ever grasped that his crimes weren't just about money, they were about trust, safety, and the fundamental bond that holds families together. I'll never know, but I do know this. Emma and the children are safe now. They're free to make their own choices, build their own dreams, love and trust without fear. They're free to be themselves without someone else controlling the narrative of their lives. In the end, that freedom was worth every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every difficult choice I had to make. Some battles are worth fighting, even when the cost seems too high to bear, especially then. From my balcony, I can see Emma through the window, bent over her textbooks, building a future for herself and her children. My grandsons sleep peacefully in beds that belong to them, in a home where they're safe. Sophie's art projects cover our refrigerator, bright splashes of color that speak to a childhood unmarked by fear. This is what victory looks like, not grand or dramatic, but quiet, steady, and real. A family that chose love over lies, truth over comfort, freedom over the illusion of security. We survived, we're together, we're home, and for the first time in years, that's enough.